She thought she could humiliate another black man and walk away clean, just like every time before. But this time, the man she tried to break would be the one to break her entire career. The heat sat heavy over Mon, Georgia, the air thick and restless. Derrick Rowe eased his rental down Pine Street, just a few turns from his mother's old house. On the seat beside him, a grocery bag shifted with every bump. Milk, bread, and her favorite lemon cookies. It was supposed to be a simple trip, a quiet weekend, a quick visit home after nearly a year away. The town looked the same, maybe too much the same. In the rearview mirror, Derrick caught sight of a patrol car. It had been following him for blocks now. He flicked his turn signal, shifted lanes, hoping the cop would pass. It didn't. Red and blue flashed, a short burst of siren. Derrick sighed, already knowing the script. He pulled over, watched as Officer Karen Delqua stepped out. Mid-40s, rigid stance, mirrored sunglasses, hand already resting near her holster. She walked like the world owed her respect. "License and registration," she ordered, voice clipped. Derrick kept his hands visible. "Okay," reaching into my glove box. "Slow," she barked. He moved carefully, handing her the documents. "What's your business around here?" "My mom lives just up the street." Karen's eyes narrowed. "This car's rented. I flew in yesterday, from Seattle." A long pause, then, "Step out of the vehicle." Derrick blinked. "Sorry?" "Step out." He obeyed, cautiously, hands up, confused. Karen circled him like a vulture sizing up prey. "You match the description of a suspect from this morning. I've been at my mother's house all day. Feel free to check." No reply. She muttered into her radio, calling for backup. Derrick shook his head. "Officer, I know my rights. I've done nothing wrong." "Hands on the hood," she snapped. He hesitated. "You resisting?" she growled, shoving him roughly. Disappointment flickered across Derrick's face. Not fear, not anger, just tired resignation. He placed his hands on the sun-baked metal. "I'm a corporate consultant," he said over his shoulder. "I don't carry anything illegal." "Shut up. You're making this worse," Karen snapped. Another cruiser pulled up. A younger officer, Hernandez, stepped out, uncertainty written across his face. Karen briefed him quickly. He looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Karen cuffed Derrick anyway. "On what charge?" Derrick asked, voice steady. "Resisting arrest." "I didn't resist. I asked a question." "You moved toward me, aggressively." Derrick didn't argue. He knew better. She shoved him into the back seat. As the cruiser rolled toward the station, Derrick stayed silent, thinking about the groceries he'd left cooking in the sun, about his worried mother, about how many times he'd seen this same story play out. Only this time, it was him. At the station, they fingerprinted him, took his mugshot, shoved a clipboard at him without explanation. Karen wrote her report with mechanical precision. Aggressive posture, verbal threats, non-compliance. She'd written it 100 times before. But something about this arrest unsettled her. Because Derrick hadn't cracked. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't begged. He had just stared her down. Calm, patient, dangerous in a way she didn't know how to handle. They kept him overnight without a call. Derrick sat on a hard bench under buzzing fluorescent lights, wrists sore from the cuffs. He wasn't panicking. He was planning, analyzing. At 7:13 a.m., another officer opened the cell. Older, gray around the edges, clipboard in hand. "You're charged with obstruction and resisting arrest. Bail hearings this afternoon. I want to see the report," Derrick said. "You'll need a lawyer for that." So they gave him one call. He dialed Marvin Beeksley, an old law school friend, now a defense attorney in Augusta. Marvin answered on the third ring. 30 minutes later, he was already on the road. "Hang tight," Marvin said. "We're not letting this slide." At the station that afternoon, Karen sat at her desk, cool and smug, until Marvin walked in. Sharp navy suit, calm energy, clipboard in hand. I'm representing Mr. Rowe. I want the arrest footage and full incident report. Karen's fingers drummed the desk. That's internal. You'll get it through the court. If you're so sure about your actions, Marvin said, voice razor sharp, you shouldn't mind transparency. Karen didn't answer. Derrick made bail 2 hours later, walking out of the station, Marvin at his side. Karen watched him leave, and for the first time, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Doubt. That night, alone in her apartment, she pulled up the dashcam footage. She watched herself shove Derrick unprovoked. She stared at the screen for a long time before quietly closing the laptop. Meanwhile, in Marvin's rental office, Derrick and Marvin were gathering ammo. She's got priors, Marvin said, flipping through papers. 2 complaints, both sealed, both black men. I'm not letting this go, Derrick said. They count on silence, Marvin said. But you're not built for silence, are you? No, not anymore. The next morning, Karen pulled into the precinct, chin high, trying to wear her confidence like armor. But she could feel it, the doubt gnawing at her. Every sideways glance, every clipped conversation. Even Officer Hernandez, her backup that night, barely nodded at her anymore. And it was about to get worse. Across town at the Bibb County Courthouse, Marvin filed motions, subpoenas for dashcam footage, requests for a full investigation into Karen Delqua's histo. 2 weeks. That's how long until the preliminary hearing. And Karen felt the walls closing in. She sat in her cruiser, staring at the folded court summons, feeling something heavy building behind her ribs. Not fear, not yet, but something close. Meanwhile, Derrick wasn't just sitting back. He was digging. In Marvin's office, old news articles and public complaints piled up. That her? Marvin asked, pointing at a faded newspaper clipping. Derrick nodded. Kid from 2019. College-bound. Broken wrist after a sidewalk stop. No charges? Family didn't press. Probably scared. Probably tired. Derrick set the article down. That ends now. But help was coming from an unexpected place. At the courthouse, a clerk named Raina Blunt had been quietly watching the case unfold. She knew Karen's record, not from rumors, but from experience. Her brother Andre had been locked up at 17 for obstructing an officer. Same phrasing, same tactics. Raina didn't call the police. She didn't call the news. She called Marvin. They met in the back of a gusty cafe near downtown. I know what she's been doing, Raina said. And I'm ready to talk. You sure? Marvin asked. I've got copies, names, dates, everything they tried to bury. Derrick stared at her. Why now? Raina didn't flinch. Because 5 years ago, I stayed quiet, and I'm tired of feeling like I helped them. Marvin nodded slowly. Okay, then we fight. That night, Karen's world crumbled a little more. At home, she turned on the news, just in time to see her name crawl across the screen. Officer under investigation after questionable traffic stop. The coverage was short, but the damage was done. At roll call the next morning, the energy had shifted. Few officers met her eyes. Even Hernandez stayed silent. Her captain pulled her aside and spoke low. You're on restricted duty until the court rules. Karen stiffened. I followed protocol. Then you've got... But she knew better. Because this time, the man she tried to break wasn't backing down. And for the first time in her career, she was the one standing under the spotlight, nowhere to hide. Officers she used to laugh with now barely made eye contact. Conversations ended quick. Her locker had been moved, shoved, really, to the farthest corner of the room. Karen told herself it was temporary, that people would forget. But deep down, she knew better. She avoided mirrors every time she caught her reflection. It wasn't herself she saw. It was a woman unraveling. That weekend, her brother called from Florida. They hadn't spoken in a year. "You good?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said too fast. "You sure? Saw your name floating around online. Looks like politics, people trying to stir stuff up." There was a pause. "Just make sure you're being honest, Karen. 'Cause if you're not—" "I said I'm fine," she snapped. He didn't push, just said goodbye. She tossed her phone onto the couch and collapsed into the silence. Her mind flickered back to Raina Blount, the courthouse clerk. Raina had looked at her a little too long the other day. Karen knew that look. Suspicion, maybe knowledge. Maybe she had seen the records, the names, the patterns. Karen stood up and poured herself a drink. She wasn't about to lose everything over one traffic stop, not after everything she'd clawed her way through. Meanwhile, in Marvin's cramped office, Raina finished typing her sworn affidavit. She added it to a thickening folder marked Roe v. Visas and Delacroix. They now had signed statements from 3 separate men: Wallace, another warehouse worker, and a retired teacher, each detailing almost identical experiences. "You think we'll get that dash cam footage in time?" Derrick asked, arms crossed. "We will," Marvin replied. "Judge already signed off. It'll be in court next week." Now it wasn't just about testimony. It was about proof. The town held its breath. Some prayed the truth would come out. Others just wanted it to disappear. That night before the hearing, Karen sat in her cruiser outside the station, staring across at the courthouse. The lights flickered in the windows. Her heart thudded in her chest. She could still lie under oath, could twist the truth just enough. Maybe they'd believe her. But then the footage arrived, and with it, the choice was ripped away. The preliminary hearing wasn't packed, but tension clung to the room like smoke. Family, reporters, neighbors, all crammed into the benches, staring at the defense table where Derrick sat, steady as ever. Marvin stood next to him, flipping through a thick file. Across the aisle, Karen sat rigid, her face carved from stone. Judge Bernice Lockwood entered, gavel cracking against wood. "All rise." They did. "This isn't a trial," the judge said, "only to determine if charges move forward." But everyone knew better. Reputations hung in the bag. Marvin stepped forward. "Your Honor, we request to begin with dashcam footage from Officer Delacroix's cruiser. It directly challenges her incident report." The judge nodded. The lights dimmed. A screen buzzed to life. The video played, timestamp flashing, sirens lighting up Derrick's windshield, Karen's voice barking orders, her hand resting on her holster. Then the shove. No threats, no lunge, no raised voice. Just Derrick asking a question and getting slammed against his own hood for it. Then the cuffs. Then silence. The footage ended. The judge turned toward Karen. "Officer Delacroix, is this how you describe the interaction?" Karen shifted uncomfortably. "Not exactly, Your Honor, but in the moment." "Did the defendant raise his voice, lunge at you?" Karen hesitated, looked for the first time at Derrick. "No," she said, "not physically." A ripple passed through the room. Marvin rose again. "Your Honor, we also submit 3 sworn statements. Different men, same story, years apart. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a pattern." Wallace took the stand first, then the retired teacher, then the third man. Each story added another crack in Karen's crumbling defense. She stared straight ahead, hands trembling. Finally, it was her turn. Karen swore in and sat, fists clenched in her lap. Marvin approached. "How long have you served in the Mon Police Department?" 12 years. "In that time, how many formal complaints?" 4, she whispered. "And do you believe any were valid?" A long pause. "No." "Even this one?" She glanced at the judge, at Raina, at Derrick. Finally, "Yes." Her voice was a thread of sound. Outside, reporters buzzed like hornets. Karen slipped out a side door, unseen but not unnoticed. Inside, Judge Lockwood gave her ruling. There is sufficient evidence to proceed to full trial against Officer Delacroix for misconduct and falsifying reports. The gavel came down. It should have felt like an ending, but it wasn't. The trial moved fast. Once the dashcam footage went public, there was no putting the lid back on. Karen was suspended without pay. Her union lawyer spun desperate defenses, emotional strain, misinterpretation, but no one was buying it. 3 weeks later, the verdict came in. Karen stripped of her badge, barred from ever serving in law enforcement again. No jail time, but no second chances either. Outside, reporters shouted her name. She kept her head down, moving fast through the parking lot. Everyone saw her anyway. Marvin clapped Derrick on the back. "You did it." Derrick just stared at the crowd. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just didn't back down." That night, local news stations debated the case. Some called it a wake-up call for small-town policing. Others warned that a single win didn't fix years of silence. Derrick didn't watch. He sat on his mother's porch, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, listening to the night sounds. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," he said. "But it's not over." "It never is," she said. But this time, she smiled. They had to look. Down the street, life went on. A kid laughing on his bike, an old man walking his dog. But things were different now. A week later, the city announced a full review of every traffic stop Karen had made in the last decade. Internal Affairs sent out dozens of notices. The mayor issued a press release promising transparency. Derrick didn't care about promises. He filed a civil suit demanding public records, proof, not words. Karen quietly left town a month later. No apologies, no interviews. Her house went up for sale. Her cruiser auctioned off. Her name faded from the news, but not from memory. 6 weeks later, at a town hall, Raina stood at the mic. "No one should be scared to ask why they're being pulled over," she said. "No one should have to prove they deserve respect." The applause wasn't loud. It was better. It was real. That night, Derrick opened his inbox. Hundreds of messages poured in. Thank yous, shared stories, cries for help. He read every single one. Not because he craved attention, but because each story reminded him why he spoke up in the first place. Months passed. The media moved on. The town moved forward. Slowly, imperfectly. At Eastside High, a teacher added Derrick's case to her curriculum. At the barbershop, younger kids started listening closer when the old heads talked history. In church bulletins, someone scribbled, "Your voice matters, even if it shakes." Derrick didn't rush back to Seattle. He stayed, started attending council meetings, started helping others file complaints, started hosting Tuesday night workshops, Know Your Rights, at the community center. Teenagers, mothers, seniors, even an off-duty cop sitting quiet in the back. One night, 17-year-old Keon asked, "Didn't you want to give up?" Derrick smiled. "Yeah, a lot. But if I had, she'd still have her badge. And I'd still be wondering, what if?" Keon nodded. "Guess we can't let stuff slide no more, huh?" "No," Derrick said. "Not anymore." Marvin visited often. They talked about the civil case. But mostly, they talked about what real change looked like. "It's not about punishing people," Derrick said one night. "It's about making sure truth means something." Marvin laughed. "Put that on your campaign signs." Derrick chuckled. "Not yet." But people were already asking about leadership, about next steps. Meanwhile, 2 towns over, Karen Delacroix sat alone in a small apartment. Job applications unanswered. Her badge, once a door opener, now a sealed fake. She watched one of Derrick's workshops online once, anonymously. When he said, "Your silence gives permission," she closed the laptop and sat there, listening to the silence she'd once enforced. Redemption doesn't come easy. Sometimes it never comes at all. But the lesson wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to the town now, to the kids, to the ones who would never again be told they were invisible. Because truth doesn't ask for permission. It just is. And when it's spoken, when it's heard, believed, and fought for, it can change everything. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, if you believe silence isn't an option anymore, subscribe now, right now, because your voice matters, your story matters. And if you stay silent, someone else will write the ending for you. Don't let them.